It's my pleasure to chair this session because this area is something that I'm particularly interested in. Since intellectual disability is a lifespan kind of an approach, we see more of children and adolescents. It stands to reason, therefore, that we will be very much interested in the adults with intellectual disability as well. I'm happy to be a part of two presentations today. One of them is by Ruma Banerjee, and the other one is by Professor B.S. Chavan. Dr. Chavan ought to have been with us right away, but due to some exigencies, he'll probably come in a little late. But in any case, we will start with Madam Ruma Banerjee presenting her stuff. What's important about Ruma Banerjee is that she's a person whom I've known for many decades now. And people working in rehabilitation, community-based rehabilitation, and inclusive education, these are our two major areas. There are not many people working in these areas. And so these people are very important to us. Take, for example, the case of Dr. B.S. Chavan. He's a psychiatrist, head of the Department of Excellence, and he's interested in rehabilitation in a big way. So I can imagine that students who train under him, and I'm talking about medical and non-medical students who will train under him, will definitely have rehabilitation as a big part of their training, which is not the case in most others. So a lot of senior people don't really think of rehabilitation as quickly as they think of many other things. So I would expect that more and more mental health professionals look at rehabilitation not as a separate subspecialty, but as something bread and butter. We have a lot to gain. People like Ruma Banerjee in the community are badly needed because the medical setup can't really take care of these people all through their lifespan. And so we need a lot of interested, motivated individuals who work like her over long spans of time and therefore see people from childhood to adulthood and old age. So it will be very interesting to listen to what Ruma Banerjee has to say. Madam, may I have you start? You can handle it yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Shobha. I'm really privileged to be here and to be a part of the NIMHANS ECHO R2R virtual knowledge program. And I will be sharing today my experience in this field of rehabilitation, which has been now over 3 decades that we have been working. As shared with Dr. Shobha also, that rehabilitation, why we need it, when we see into the magnitude of the problem, especially for the intellectual disabled, the recent census of 2011 has come out with the data as 2% of the total population has the neurodevelopmental disabilities exist in the 2% of the total population, and where we also see intellectual disabilities a part of this 2%. And as we all know, this is a most vulnerable and the disadvantaged group. When we look at the other disabilities, of course, they also have their own limitations depending on the disabilities or impairment with the sensory or the physical impairments. But when it comes to the intellectual disabilities, because it has to do with the intellectual capacity of the person, the cognitive abilities of this person, so therefore this makes it much more vulnerable to them. And as you know, because they can't speak for themselves, so they also are a disadvantaged group. The third is the issue that we look into it is the stigma and prejudice, because we can't, when the society sees a person with intellectual disability, there is always a stigma attached to it, not only with the person, but even to the whole family at large. And looking into the rehabilitation aspects, or looking into the needs and what are the provisions required for the intellectual disabilities here, what we have seen, there is a very big gap between the needs and the provisions, especially when it comes to the rural and the small towns in our country. Seva-in-Action has been working, basically is a voluntary organization. We are working with a mission to empower people with disabilities, especially our work is in Karnataka. Seva-in-Action was started in 1985 with the whole objective to reach out to persons with disability and children with disability and their families through community-based rehabilitation and inclusive education programs. Looking into the whole issue of the needs, what was there in the community. And as already said earlier, like a big gap that exists when you have a large number of children with disabilities living in the rural area and there are not much provisions, that made Seva-in-Action to take up this initiative. Our work in the community-based rehabilitation has been greatly inspired by Dr. H.S. Narayan, who was the former head of the department of the Psychiatry, NIMHANS. And in fact, I have a lot of experience working with him when he motivated people like us to go to the community and really reach out to the community when NIMHANS used to have their camps and programs in the rural areas. So that was that was a most important aspect which showed us like where these people are, where these children are and where they need a lot of support. At Seva-in-Action, we work with a cross-disability approach, means besides intellectual disabilities, we also work with the visual impairment, hearing impairment, physical disabilities also. When we started our work in the rural areas, it was seen that the institutions, especially the whole need for establishing a community-based rehabilitation was because there was a limited reach with the institutions. The institutions, as we all know, either would be at the district level or the state level or would be at the national level. But when it comes to people with disabilities, they have a lot of problems. One is accessing these institutions, and even the reach of the institutions have its limited capacity depending on the professionals, place, and how they would go about it. Another issue why there was a need for the community approach, community-based rehabilitation approach, was the scattered population of people with disability. Because as we know, we may not get a very large number of people maybe in a small village or a small town. People are there, but they are all scattered in small towns, small villages. So you cannot even start with having centers or hospitals or institutions in small villages or small hubs. So you need a common place to start it. And why the whole issue of community-based rehabilitation was more needed was that we had to provide an access to rehabilitation. Because it was not just enough that these people get identified or diagnosed, maybe at any private hospital or any institution, but finally, what happens for the rehabilitation? So there was a need, like how they get the rehabilitation services, and that was community-based rehabilitation was the only strategy and approach, like how do we take services to these people. Community-based rehabilitation was initiated by World Health Organization, as we know, in 1978, basically to answer this whole issue of taking the services, rehabilitation services, to the community and to the people. It has looked into how to establish access to rehabilitation services, especially in the developing countries, by making use of the existing resources, because a country does have the resources. So how do we really tap those resources which is available? And I think when I shared the case study, you would be coming to know like what are the other resources which is already there and how we can tap that for rehabilitation purposes. the basic principles on which community-based rehabilitation works is providing a comprehensive and holistic rehabilitation. As Dr. Shobha said, like it is a lifespan approach where it starts from a childhood till an adult, till the old age. So community-based rehabilitation works on these principles of how rehabilitation services are provided from a childhood till the adulthood and giving that proper support and in a holistic manner. It is not just giving either health or education, but you need all the aspects of rehabilitation. Another most important thing of community-based rehabilitation is demystification of the whole technology of rehabilitation. In fact, Seva-in-Action's whole work in community-based was basically trying to demystify the technology, whether it is therapies like physiotherapy, whether it is speech therapy, whether it is providing simple aids and appliances. So basically, this was a part that we also developed through Bamboos, saying like it is not just like a person needs to only come to a physiotherapy center to do a therapy, but through play activities, through simple parks which could be done. It was done in a school, of course. We had identified a school and we had done this. These things could also be developed in the community and where the rehabilitation services could be provided with. The WHO in 2010 has promoted this CBR Matrix, which looks into the whole lifespan approach of a disabled person. And when we see the matrix of CBR, it starts from the health, education, livelihood, social, and empowerment. So when you're talking about the whole rehabilitation process, there is a need, like we need to look at it, as we said, as a more comprehensive way and in a continuity. Like it cannot be just the diagnosis and prevention or taking the medical care. That is not enough. But from the health and the diagnosis and providing with the medical rehabilitation assistive technology, there is a need to have, to see like how the person also gets education, and the education which are in the different areas starting from early childhood and which goes to secondary and even the lifelong learning. The livelihood programs, which is the most important part of a disabled person, and of course the social component, because any person, they are living in a society, living in a community. So until and unless we have that social inclusion and the social rehabilitation a part of the whole process, any rehabilitation process may not be successful. And that is one of the major challenges we face, especially when it comes to intellectual disability, the social rehabilitation, and finally empowering the person with disabilities, where they have a voice, where they are able to express their need, where they are able to advocate for themselves. So this is the matrix which has been developed and which talks about the whole lifespan approach for the rehabilitation. We can't do it in piecemeal basis, the rehabilitation process. I think that is the most important component. Any rehabilitation professional or any rehabilitation worker that we are working in this field, we need to keep in mind, like it has its continuity, and that is how we need to meet the needs. How Seva-in-Action finally is working towards the community under this whole, I just like to share a few words about it. Under the Seva-in-Action program that we are doing in the community-based, we have the education programs where we start with the early, once the child is identified, we have the preparatory centers in the CBR program. The case study which I'm going to share, and basically I'm talking about that place, which I'm going to come in a few minutes. So the education, after the identification, the whole education component is looked into it, like how can we prepare the child to get the basic education. And I think education, as we all know, is the foundation for any development, for any person, for any child or any human being. So that is how the resources that was available in the community was the schools. So in Seva-in-Action, what we did was we identified school as one of the most important component in providing education to children with disabilities. And with our government being proactive in inclusion for people with disability. As we all know now, of course, we have the right to education, but when we started our work in 1985, we had the National Policy of Education, which clearly said any child with disability needs to be prepared and be integrated into the mainstream schools. So that was some of that is the policy. We tried to look into it, and we tried to implement it when we initiated our community-based rehabilitation program. Our CBR program had a lot of focus, or you can say a CBR program had an education model in the whole rehabilitation process. Because that was one of the most appropriate ways and means in providing, in developing a child. Because as we all know, that the most important years of the child is the early years of the child, where it needs a lot of stimulation, where it needs a lot of support, where it needs education. So when there are schools, and in our country we had the schools were available in a small village also. So of course it was not easy for taking the children to the school. We had a lot of resistance from the teachers, and they thought like we were not in our senses bringing a child with disability to the school. But it took time for us, and finally we could integrate, or we could make use of the government school resources to help in educating the child. We also have a pre-vocational center. We have the child in the pre-vocational, and our vocational program and livelihood program is more based on the community. But whatever trade is available in the community, we try to make use of it. The socialization component was a very important part, because working in the community where the child is already there with the family, the child is in that village. So we also used a lot of community support, whether it is having the cultural programs, whether it is taking part in the festivals, whether taking the child out. In fact, we also we promote taking them out for adventure trips and picnics and all. And finally, we also have that will be coming towards sharing about the whole empowerment of the intellectual disabled, which we now lately has been taken up for the past 3-4 years in a very specific manner for the intellectual disabled, called through self-advocates. So the community-based rehabilitation program that Seva-in-Action initiated, it started from the early years, from education, through the vocational and livelihood program, through socialization and the empowerment, which we will, through the case study, I would be sharing more about these aspects, like how we are been able to make use of it. Because this was a vocational program we had. So today I would be specifically taking up one person from one of our CBR programs and sharing about how the whole community-based rehabilitation take you through the whole process of community-based rehabilitation program, what exactly happened and how we went about helping him through a comprehensive and holistic way. He's now a 23 years old intellectual disabled adult living in a village called Ramnagar. He lives with his parents. He's the eldest of the 2 siblings. He has a younger brother who is studying in class 12th. His father owns a bakery, and the mother is a homemaker. This Mr. X was diagnosed in a private hospital as an intellectual disabled when he was just 1 year old. The early identification for this boy, Mr. X, came by the mother itself, because when the mother saw the child was not able to have the fine motor coordination, he was not able to hold the bottle while giving milk. So that time the mother took the child to the hospital, and in a private hospital, of course, in a small place there, and there the doctor diagnosed was able to diagnose the delay in the development, where he also had problems in standing, in sitting, and And the doctor did share with the mother that the child will have delay in the development and delay in many of the activities. But at the same time, the doctor also suggested, like, because we know in a small place, a school where you'll not have any specialized centers or services to take him separately. So the doctor advised you can admit the child to any preschool or any school there, and you can continue with the education. Don't let the child be just being there at home. Of course, that was the first and most important support given, and most important suggestion given by the doctor, because as we all know, any child having a disability, the first person whom they meet is a doctor in that place in a village. They will not go anywhere else. And when they get the right direction and suggestion, I think a lot of difference is made into the child. And that is what we can see in this child when he gradually develops and the rehabilitation is provided. Though the child was going into the regular mainstream schools, but still he was having a problem, and that is how a CBR worker, we had a CBR program in Ramnagar, so that is how a CBR worker came in contact with the school, because in our CBR program we had a lot of emphasis in working with the schools, as I shared earlier. So while visiting some of the schools and working with the schools, this CBR worker came in contact with Mr. X, and where the private school teacher said, like, yes, we are having a lot of difficulty with the child, we don't know what to do. He's 13 years old and he's not able to even write any letters or do anything. Just to share about our CBR program in Ramnagar, this program was initiated in 1985 with local people there. This was one of the places identified having a large number of children with disabilities. That is how we started working in this place, and we got support from the local people to start. And we got a local person also, a CBR worker there, who was ready to work, and that's how we trained the CBR person, and we started with the program in this place. Of course, over the years, and this whole approach of having the CBR program in Ramnagar was to provide education, medical rehabilitation, livelihood, and any other supportive measures which is available at the community level for the people with disabilities. So that is how this whole CBR program started, and the whole focus or the whole approach in working in this program is through the home-based services, like where our CBR worker visits the home, gets in touch with the parents, talks to them. Then we work very closely with the government schools to integrate children, to help the government school in the education of these children. Plus, from the community, we were able to get a small place in one of the choultries to run a center as a preparatory program for these children, and where we have a resource center and a sort of a pre-vocational and vocational program. So this is what the center works. This is how a CBR program works. And from this CBR, this program in Ramnagar, Mr. X could get the support in terms of, he was, at the age of 13 years, he was somehow promoted to class 6, but without any basic knowledge of language, or even able to, he could at least, he could repeat the nursery rhymes or whatever was taken to him, but he hardly had any writing skills, or was not able, even his comprehension was very low. But because the parents did not want this child to go anywhere else, and they said somehow my child should be there in a school, we want to see the child. So the private school somehow continued with the child, and of course the CBR worker also did provide support to the child. Of course, in the initial time and period, the parents were quite resistant, and the most important, the most difficult part was they were not ready to accept that the child has any form of intellectual disability, because his motor functions were normal, his speech was normal, may not be, he was not able to cope up with the academic demands of the school, but he could recite and simple things, and he could speak. So the parents did not accept that he has any sort of disability. But when he could not get through the classes, and he had a lot of difficulty even in passing the exams, and so then they realized that no, he needs some sort of a support, and that is where a CBR worker, who was also over a period of time trained to work as a resource teacher, started helping the child. One is, after the school hours, whatever the homework was giving or whatever the assignments were giving, she was going and helping the child, and even trying to develop his simple writing skills, his reading skills, selecting the subjects where he has difficulty, coming out with simple teaching materials to help the child. He of course had a lot of difficulty with maths. He could not cope up with the subject at all, and gradually, because the school was supporting in that way, like, okay, did not say we are going to take that child totally out of the school. With a lot of counseling support and with a lot of work with the school, the child somehow could pass with the help of a scribe, because as we know, the state government has provisions to help disabled children with a scribe, whether if they are visual impaired or if they cannot write, because he was not able to write. So I think the whole this thing goes to the scribe who helped the child to get through 10th. So the family was happy, okay, somehow he could get, and he has a certificate. So that was the whole objective of getting him through the school to get a certificate. Whether he is able to cope up with those academic standards, of course, that was a question mark. There's still a question mark for that. After his schooling, there was the usual need, like now what he's going to do after that. He, of course, he passed his schooling when he was almost 18 years old. So what he will be doing. So that is where our CBR worker identified, like the father already had a bakery, and it was convinced, and she counseled the father, like instead of trying to go and find out some other vocation program, sending him out to do some other training or sending him outside, why can't he train his own son in the bakery itself? And that is how he was, with the help of our resource teacher and a CBR worker, he started getting on-the-job training by his father and the teacher in the bakery. The most important thing was how to deal with the customers, especially because it was a bakery shop which had a lot of eatables in the shop. So it was how to how to find out what the customer needs, how to give it to him. And because his father was there, so the father was always helping him, and he's assisting his father to do it. And the most biggest challenge was the money transactions, which still he faces, because he's not able to understand how much, when any customer gives him the money, how much he should give back and how to give the change and all. But he's very good at keeping the shop clean. He keeping all the bakery products wherever it is required, and he does all the other assisted work which is required to run that bakery. If you look at him at his economic rehabilitation part of it, we can definitely say that he is economically rehabilitated in his own shop, because his father has not hired any other person. He's the person, his father is there, and he's the other person who is helping his father. So instead of paying to another assistant and giving money, the same money is given to him. So in this way, he's already economically rehabilitated within his own trade. I think that is one of the most important aspects when we look into the economic rehabilitation at the community level. Like I think and especially when it comes to intellectual disability, I think the most appropriate way to rehabilitate them is within first is within their family, and the next is, I think, within the community. I think that is what was done with this adult, and his father is giving him 3,000 rupees. So that has been made, the our community worker saw to it, like, and tell him, like, if you had to hire another person, you had to pay him. So in the same lines, you, instead of paying him, you can deposit that money in his account, but you need to pay him for the work that he's doing. The challenge is still what is being faced with him, as I earlier said, because with his number concept being very poor, and he's still not been able to do is he's generally cheated by the customers, and the customers make misuse such a problem, and they know very well that he has problems, and they would give him the money, and they say, we have already given him, and he forgets to give the change and all that. And another challenge the father has, that they have to keep a strict monitoring in his eating habits, because it is a bakery and there are a lot of products, eatable products, which he is tempted and he tries to do. So the father has to discipline him, and he has his own way of dealing it. If he takes up too many things, then he said, there will be no lunch for you. So these are the challenges and that the family is facing, but he is continuing with his job there. The support, the financial support, what he got from the government and through the National Trust various schemes that we see is that there is a disability card which the resource teacher helped the family to get it. Because they had to make it through the medical certificate and all that, it was helped to. While he was in school, there is also a scholarship for these children. So any child studying up to class 10 for disabled children, they have a scholarship, and he was availing for it. Under the Niramaya health insurance, he is availing of the insurance, and he's using it for his, because he has epilepsy, and he's using it for his medicine. The one challenge still we are facing with the parents is the legal guardianship under the National Trust, because in a rural area where there is already they are a part of the community and society, the parent, they don't still feel the need, like, why there should be a legal guardian for this child. And it is taking time for us to really make him understand the need and importance for having a legal guardianship under this.
I mean, if I can interrupt.
Sure.
I was just going to ask you, why would you press for this legal guardianship? I mean, what are the kinds of things you foresee that would happen if they don't get this legal guardianship done? This is just, I thought we would have it for some discussion. But what might you think will be the troubles?
One is, see, there are two ways of the two most important things which is covered under the legal guardianship is, one is taking care of the adult itself. Like, for example, if it is a very profound degree of disability, if it is there, then where the person does not know even how to take care of himself, and he needs he's a high support need, and where he needs a caregiver for him. So there you need a legal guardian who can ensure that this person is taken care, whether it is by a caregiver, whether it is by a family member, wherever it is everything. So it is the care which is required, especially for high support needs for intellectual disability. One is that what we need. And the second most important thing that we need for legal guardianship is the property for these people, because generally what we have seen is, like, these children are deprived of their property rights. In many of the cases, I think in 80 to 90% of the situation we have seen, because this child have an intellectual disability, they are not given the property equally. So when you have a legal guardian, that legal guardian's responsibility also becomes to take care of the property of it. So there are two most important things a legal guardian has to take care of an intellectual disability. One is taking care for very severe and profound categories of disability. And the second is also the property and the financial support that a person requires. Because I think it is for everybody of us, we require that financial support. So why will these children be deprived when they need more? So the legal guardianship responsibility is to take care of both these aspects.
Will the legal guardian be monitored?
Yes. See, the whole process under the, how the legal, can I share the whole process of, see, I think I have to share about the National Trust. So National Trust, as we know, is a autonomous body under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, which has formed mainly to take care of what will happen to this child, especially the intellectual disabled, the cerebral palsy, the multiple disability, and the autism. What will happen to these children when the parents are no more? So to give the answer to this issue, this whole concept of legal guardianship was made. How is this monitored, as Dr. Shobha asked just now? Every district has local level committees. So these National Trust has constituted local level committees in all the districts of the country. This local level committee comprises of the district collector or the DC. There is an NGO and a person with disability. So these three people are the main, is a committee which is responsible to monitor the legal guardians. So when you apply for a legal guardianship, like an adult with disability, with intellectual disability, when he applies for the legal guardianship, it is taken up by this local level committee. And because the DC is finally the chairperson of the local committee, so the DC and this local level committee has the authority to monitor the custody or how this legal guardianship is doing its duties towards the intellectually disabled child. It's because one is why this is all required is because due to the limitations of the intellectual capacity of these children. Because when we know there is a problem with the intellectual level of these children, the cognitive ability of these children, so there is always a need to have a guardian. Because for others, there is when you are normal at 18 years, you are guardian of yours. You don't need a legal guardian after 18 years. Why these adults, they need legal guardianship? Because the whole issue is with the their intellectual capacity and their decision making and how they look at things. So that is why
I was wondering that this young person's father, what does he think will happen? I mean, automatically the bakery and the property will go to him, he thinks, or there are interested members of the extended family who will look after him. And why is he not concerned? Or is it the worry about talking about death? You know,
yes.
There are many people who believe if you make a will and you do something, then you're ready to die. And so let's not talk about it. So,
while discussing, one thing he said, one thing is, he said, like, my other son is still in class 12, so maybe once he becomes an adult, I will be. But it is not like he can also become a legal guardian. That is not there. So I think somehow we need to convince him, like, it is not that your son only, a non-disabled son only has to be a legal guardian, but you can also become. He's waiting for the other who's just studying in 12. When he becomes an adult, so he'll make him the legal guardian. Then he becoming a legal guardian for the child. So that's what it is.
we should continue.
Yeah. As we said, when it comes to the whole rehabilitation aspects, I think it is a lifelong. It is a lifespan support or lifespan rehabilitation approach that we're looking at it. And we are also looking into how we are going to empower these people with disabilities. As we all know, with the UN conventions, the way the United Nations Convention has spoken about the decision making of even children with intellectual disabilities. I think keeping that in mind, these were some of the things which started from 2000, from the last 2 years, from 2013-14. There has been a self-advocacy forum for intellectually disabled children promoted. In fact, Mr. X, he's a member, he has attended this self-advocacy forum training for intellectually disabled, which is called SAFI. It is a national forum where intellectually disabled are now also provided with capacity building and training programs. So we conducted this training in Ramnagar district, where he was a part with the other intellectual disabled. He is now a member. Karnataka has a SAFI. Karnataka SAFI is there, so he's a member of that self-advocacy forum of Karnataka. He participated in the conference. There was a national conference in Udaipur last year, so he went to the conference. Parents didn't go, of course, the mentors. I will be sharing about the SAFI now. So he went with the mentors there. No, none of his parents, nobody escorted him or went with him. Last year, NASIO comes out with this award, for different categories for disability. So we asked his father, because the father had already, he was working in the bakery. So we asked his father, the family, to apply for this Best Employee award. So he was selected for the Best Employee and he got an award last year. I would just like to share about this whole issue of evolving capacities for intellectually disabled on this aspect. Because see, as we are looking into the issue of intellectual disabilities, I think there has been a lot of development. Though we know there are these limitations with their intellectual capacity, but what we are learning and what we are experiencing through this self-advocacy forums of disabled, like if these adults are provided with opportunities, are provided with capacity building, their capacities can evolve. It is not that their mental, because they don't have that mental ability of academic skills or higher reasoning skills. So that does not mean like they are not able to take simple decisions or they are not able to understand many things. So in fact, the self-advocacy forum has really, people like us we were working for so many years, it was a great learning and a great eye-opener for us when we were doing some of these training programs with the adults. Because generally the situation is in our environment, in our country or whatever, we say like, okay, the child, if he's in an urban area, the intellectual child would go to a special school. After the special school, if there is a provision, he may get some vocational training. Otherwise, the child is just sitting at home, not knowing what to do. And that's how when the child is just sitting at home and does not know what to do, and that is where their capacities really become handicapped and they're not able to really understand. But when they are out, when they are working, and when we are also exposing them to different stimulating activities, we see a lot of these things happen. And in the training program, we did not assume so many things. Like when we were doing the training programs, they came and they were sharing about the problems that they're having with the parents in the house, in the families. So those were some of the things we ourselves were surprised, like how an intellectually disabled child could share about the problems that he is facing by the parents or by in the family. How is he treated? How he's not allowed to mix up with others. When somebody comes at home, the parent tell him, no, you be inside the room. No need for you to come out. But the parent thinks like, oh, he's an intellectual disabled child, he will not understand what I'm saying. But this child has that understanding, which we are not able to understand. That was the biggest thing we learned from here. Like we assume we don't expose this intellectually disabled child to different situation, and without exposing him, we assume he may not be able to do this, he cannot understand. And one of the most important things we say, like they were not also allowing the child to come on his own to do a job work. Generally, the parents know my child cannot travel alone in the bus. He cannot go alone and do this. But when we had these training programs, and we in Seva-in-Action, we also have a vocational training and enterprise for the adults with disability. We help the parents that you just help the child to come. You allow him, you support him for some time, you show him the road, you put him in the bus, and see, then maybe you just allow the child to come independently. You just keep a watch. You don't just see him that you are following him. And then gradually the child started coming on his own. He was independent. That fear what is there in the parents, the fear that is the community, no, these people cannot do these things. I think there is a need to change these attitudes and change these notions towards them. And this training programs of this self-advocacy forum really helped us to change attitudes among these people. And it was not only the help the capacity building of the adults, but even of the parents. So what, of course, this is on the state level. In fact, now these forums are established in other states also, and it is promoted by Parivar. As we all know, Parivar is the National Federation of the Parents for Intellectually Disabled. So they have promoted this self-advocacy forum, and in Karnataka we are closely involved, and being under National Trust and SNAC, so we have been doing these are the different states where these training self-advocacy forums are there. quite a number of states it is there. And what we did under this self-advocacy for SAFI training was, like, we trained the parents and the mentors, which was the most important thing, because parents were I think had the biggest barriers and the biggest negative attitudes towards their adults with intellectual disability. So we did a number of training, we did a sensitization program with the parents, like in how, when they become an adult, how you need to deal with them, how you need to understand them, how you need to also allow them to do certain activities. Though I know parents have the apprehension, any parent will have that apprehension even if it is a normal child. For these children, they have much more. But at the same time, how you allow the child to grow within their capacities. So there was this training program for the parents and mentors that was done to how they were going to deal with adults with intellectual disability. And it was, of course, it was a 6 weeks program, but we used to do it in once in a week, every day, and that is how the parents could come once in a week, every day, and we do it. So there were models, they had to become different models had to be done. For example, they would become a king, how you interact with when you are the head of the family, when you do different activities. So there is a module developed, especially how to train in self-advocacy forums, starting from simple self-help skills to socialization, to personality development, to thinking about themselves, to exploring about themselves, interacting, communication. So all these aspects are included in this training program. And then after the training was done, a committee was formed. Like now that you people, a committee or a group have formed, like how you form a group to share your voices, to share about your need, and to form and to advocate about the needs that you have. So after the self-advocacy training was done, then all the adults who participated in the training, they had to do an election to elect their chairperson, president, secretary. And they did it, of course, with support. And they did it, and they now have their own committee, self-advocacy group and committee, to talk, to share, and do. And many of the times now, when we help them to do voting, many of them said, like, we don't vote. And nobody allows us to do the voting. Even we asked them, when you know about the voting in the election time, do you vote? Many of them said, no, we are not allowed to vote. My father said, no, you don't go to vote. So these were also many of those things, as what an adult has a right to do, what adult can do, was shared with them, and it really helped them to understand many of the things. This is the national, from 2000, from the last 3 years, this national conference for self-advocacy forum has started. First one was in Delhi, where the chairperson who was selected, she is she's from Seva-in-Action, who is working in the enterprise development program now. In Seva-in-Action, and the second conference was in Udaipur last year. So every year throughout the state, wherever the adult groups have formed their self-advocate forums, they all come together to share, to talk, and see what has to be done. Of course, it is done with under the banner of Parivar. These were some of the outcomes. Like the most important thing that this self-advocacy training program was there are many misconceptions about these intellectual disabled people, like that they are not able to, for example, that they cannot travel independently, they are not able to take decisions, they are not able to do many things on their own. So these misconceptions was there with these people. Many of those things were really dealt with and made to understand, especially with the mentors and the parents, because there was a real need to do these things, to make the parents and to make the society understand. Then coming together, especially such forums also help them to share their problems, what difficulty they are having, and what changes they can bring into the simple day-to-day life things. It is not, we're not asking them to bring very big changes, but in day-to-day life, what are the things they are doing? Like if anybody comes at home, at least you can take the help of your child to serve tea, to serve coffee, to do something like that, to involve the child into day-to-day life and how you help this child to become more independent. this I just wanted to share was recently we did a quiz program for the intellectually disabled. This was again to break this myth. Like intellectual disabled are not able to participate in a quiz program, and in fact it was a very big challenge. The special schools, of course this was only Bangalore based, so the special schools, they had very big question like, how do you think our children can participate in a quizzing, and do you think they will be able to do it? But we had a very good response. More than 200 children participated, and of course within their capacity, whatever they could, means they got in. Some of the schools said our children just came out from their special schools to be in an environment that itself was a very big learning for them. So these are some of the socialization, some of the exposures that is very much required for them. So if we, to conclude this, what I would say that though we may say we have been able to do so many things over a period of time in the past 30 years, but there has been a lot of challenges in rehabilitation for us also, and it has not been a very easy path for us to go in. And the most important, the biggest challenge that we had and we still have is the early diagnosis, because as we know in the when you go to the small villages, town, and identifying a child until they are 1 year to 2 years, the diagnosis of this intellectual disability is still a very big issue. And we see still children who come to us, if we are going and doing home-based home program, or if you go to the PHC, then it is able. But if they are coming to us, they don't come before 2 to 3 years because diagnosis has not been done till that time. The other major barrier, problem that we face still is the barriers of attitude, stigma, and the myths surrounding intellectual disability. Still it is there, especially with adults, because as I was sharing about the SAFI training, when we did the SAFI training, so many of these things we were trying to deal with these myths and stigmas. So this is, and the most important thing is with the parents. Society, we know, will have these sort of stigma and attitudes, but the parents, we need to really change the attitudes of parents, what I feel, because that is where the whole thing needs to change, because still they are either they are overprotective or they don't care. So there is something between this that we really need to look into, how we help the parents. Another thing is maybe they're already overburdened with so many things. So how do we really help the parents to deal with adults is a very big challenge in rehabilitation. Lack of course, awareness about disabilities. It is fine in the southern districts of Karnataka, we can say, because where we have schools, where we have institutions, there is there. But in the far-fetched districts, because we are under, we work under National Trust, we are a state nodal agency, so we know, like, still intellectual disabilities, reaching out to intellectual disabilities in far-fetched areas is really a very big challenge. Vocational opportunities for these children are very limited, and we are still struggling to find out what sort of vocations for intellectually disabled, because they don't have that your school certificate or proper educational certificate to go into whatever. Government may be coming out with umpteen number of skill development programs, but they don't fit into those skill, because any skill development program requires some sort of a schooling, some sort of a education criteria for them. And the other most important challenge that we are facing is a support network, because when these adults grow, when they are either when they are in the later stages, for them, if the family is not there, what happens to them? That support network is very much required and very much needed, and that is how we are trying to develop. But it is a very big challenge developing this support network. What I would like to conclude by saying that the whole success of this community-based rehabilitation lies on that a belief of a strong commitment to equitable opportunities and inclusion. Like, I think inclusion of these children into the society, into this community, is the whole basis of successful rehabilitation. If you are able to give them equitable, whatever opportunities are there, let us also share that opportunities with them. That is what is needed for a success. We are not asking for them for anything more, but allow for an equal space for them. And the most important thing is also give them a space and also accept them as they are. Because see, we can't expect anybody to be having, to be very intelligent, be able to solve everything. So with whatever limitations they have, with whatever, I think there is most important that we need to really accept them, and we need to also accept the differences that is there in the society. So all of us may not be same. There are differences, maybe in our physical, maybe in our intellectual capacity, maybe in the way we think, we look. We're all different. So why don't we accept this difference and make a society which is more inclusive for all? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We've had a long presentation from Madam here. And you can see a brief overview of what Ruma Banerjee has been up to the last so many years. And you can see that she has been doing a lot for this area. I just thought that the groups who are sitting around here should talk something about their experiences in rehabilitation of the adult intellectually disabled. I think, see, we all are aware that success stories that all of us have seen of people who have been rehabilitated very successfully are largely because it's an individualized plan. You know, it's about one person. That one person has a very good supportive family, has a good center which supports. And all of us know in rehabilitation of the ill and of the disabled, you need a lot of work support. That is, once you go and put them into a job placement or they go for work, there also they need support. It is not as if everything ends. So when all this works, the home, the center and workplace, if people are coordinated there, then the chances of this young person working in that area then gets better and better. So I would like the group who are sitting around here and those who are listening to us to now say something about what they think or what challenges they have faced in the rehabilitation of the adult intellectual disabled, or brief stories from which one can learn how this happened. Anybody?
I am Dr. Saranya Devanathan, psychiatrist from Bengaluru in a private setup.
Yes.
With the problem with the adult intellectual disability, again is the problem because most of the parents are burnout and they've become old and they've used all their whatever financial or emotional and other supportive resources in drugging them and going to different doctors and going on, going all the way to some other faraway place because that doctor will cure everything just with one pill or one injection. And that is the main challenge because the burnout is the one where we need to work so that we'll try to get some kind of respite for them for some time. Then they come out of the burnout. Then they again start, a little bit with hopes, they try to put it. And that is the biggest challenge is burnout with adult intellectual disability. And for that, what kind of respite home we have or a respite center we have and whether we need to develop that is one thing which we need to think in the long term.
I think that's a very important question. The presence of respite care homes are very difficult to set up and run because I remember many years ago, there were two people who attempted to set up respite homes for young children, not for adults, for young people. And they had great difficulty in continuing their work and they actually shut it down because the needs were very high. People came in with a lot of expectations and the children took time to settle down. The number of hands in the homes were less. So there are multiple problems in setting up respite homes. So it requires a lot of not just capital expenditure, a great deal of commitment and a lot of trained personnel. But you're right, that's a big area and a big lacuna in the current issues. That parents don't want to keep their young people in long stay homes. They want for short periods of time, they want respite. But agreed, that's a big area. Madam, you have anything to say about respite care?
Of course, now again under National Trust, another area, as we know, there are various schemes and programs of National Trust called Gharonda. Of course, it is a total residential, then they have some. But besides that, there is another program which has been initiated in some of the state called the assisted living, where you have the adults with disability living in the community, but there is a person helping them. It is not like a home, like they're also encouraged to go to the work, they are working, but they are living a place which is set up for them, but they have to do their own work. So this is another, it is not new concept, it has been coming, it has been promoted for the 4 or 5 years, called assisted living concept, which we also think, and all of us who are working in this field, is we feel like there is really a need for such sort of assisted, we don't call it a respite, an assisted living places for adults with intellectual disability. And I think we need to do something to see how we could develop that. Because as Dr. Shobha said, like developing any, though we may call it assisted living care, but still you need somebody to take care of them, because they cannot be totally independent. The caretaker can be a parent, can be a mother, can be somebody from the family, but still there has to be somebody responsible taking care in small groups. So this is another, a model which has come out for intellectual disabled.
Anybody with any other query?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that input. But I'm not talking about assisted care or anything. I just want a respite care. Suppose here is one girl with intellectual disability. She is 24, and she needs some kind of support. And the younger sister of hers is 22. She is getting married now. The mother wants only for about a month. Somewhere this girl should be safe. That's all. They want only saved. They don't want any rehabilitation. Everything the mother will look after. Yeah. But she has got other thing to carry. And in another case, it is that mother's mother-in-law who is bedridden right now with a fracture of the leg. So she needs some respite in taking care, and she doesn't want anything except that a safety and a dignity, not a kind of rehabilitation or anything great.
Very true.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There is one question regarding the case.
With respect to the case discussed, what are the everyday challenges faced by the family, and how is the family coping up, is the question.
As this adult is a high-functioning adult, so the basic activities he is able to do for himself, like which is self-help skills and all other things, is not a problem, except that when he has epilepsy, that is where the family has a problem, and they have to be very cautious about not putting him into any such situations and conditions where there are likely this thing, like when he has not slept or he has not done, then he gets this epileptic attack. So they are very careful about it, and they know that when he is likely to get epileptic attack, so they are able to do it. The only day-to-day challenge is like his working in the bakery. Because besides the father, he is the only other person who is there to assist in that bakery. They don't have anybody else. So if he's not able to manage it, then they have to suffer sometimes big losses. That's what. But they are trying to pursue it. And when people misuse his disability. So in his workplace, they have a challenge, but otherwise at home, except his epileptic, they don't have much problem.
I was just wanting to check with the group here. One of the things that adults with intellectual disability, when their families come to us, what they tell us is, if it was not for this behavior problem, if it was not for this aggressive outburst or this particular kind of temper tantrum, he's otherwise, he's got fully self-help skill trained, he does things at home, he can definitely go, but we have serious difficulty with his anger or his aggression. So how much does, and we know that people with intellectual disability have a greater chance to have psychiatric disorders, behavior disorders, it's almost double. Such being the case, I see the issue of behavior problems and psychiatric disorders coming in the way of the full rehabilitation of that individual. Has that been an issue with many of the people you have seen, or anybody in the group has any queries about it? Epilepsy is one, you said that. I mean, it's an issue when there are seizures. But otherwise?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is not related to this case study what I shared, but we also have a vocational unit here. We call it a skill development unit in Kormangla, Seva-in-Action. There we have a Down syndrome child with extreme adult. He is 18 years. He's I think 19 to 20 years old. He's with us in this unit. And as you said rightly, like when he's doing his training and vocational, he's very good. There is no problem with him. No, he will be doing it. But he has problems with his peers, with one or two persons, and he will be always fighting. And if the teacher is not able to control these behaviors, he goes totally out of control. And just 3 days back, he was so angry, he went to one of the rooms, he broke the table, chairs, glasses, and after doing that, he will come and tell, I have done this. And then he will say that, in my anger, I have done this. So it is, as you write, in fact, we fear, because they are working with all the children, other adults are there, and they're working in a skill development program there, where there are different type of equipments they have to use. So there is a fear in us, like we can't leave that group separately, like somebody has to be there and somebody has to also help him in his behavioral problem, try to explain. It's a very big challenge for us, in fact.
Yeah, so I was wondering, would you want to say anything that in the places where you all have rehabilitated intellectually disabled people or people who work, how much do they take the help of people like psychologists or behavioral therapists? How much of work? Because I believe that improvement can occur, it can still occur, and there's no end to what can occur, not just in the intellectually disabled, in all. But in this in particular, I feel that there is always scope for better ways of doing certain things. So how much I know there are not enough personnel to go around, but even then, anyway.
If the facility does have provisions for a multidisciplinary team, then I think it's quite a lot, because you may have particular behavior today which requires to be dealt with, and even if that's resolved, you may have a new behavior that comes in.
No, I was talking about in the places where rehabilitation occurs, outside of a hospital setting.
Yes, in a rehab center, ma'am, is what you're saying. Yes. So even in a rehab center, if they are there for a long stay period or for a short stay period, if a multidisciplinary team is there, they would require a lot of support with respect to handling their behaviors. The reason being is today, as I said, there may be a new behavior. Tomorrow again, I may have another behavior which comes in. So in that way, continued follow-up support is required by other professionals also.
Yeah, that makes it hard. That makes it hard for many centers, because not all of them have a very good network of people supporting them. Because I believe that nobody can say, I will handle this alone by myself. It's always a group of people who do it. And so most centers who talk about rehabilitation must have a good network of people who will constantly be advising, and they can consult. And I'm sure you all will feel empowered in helping them more. And that is a dearth. Yes.
They've appreciated the SAFI venture, and they look at understanding individuals with intellectual disability and looking at it from their perspective. Their question is the challenges in addressing certain issues like marriage. So how easy is it to handle, and how it seems that they find it easy to explain to parents, but how do they handle if it comes from the demand comes from the client?
Have you been faced with a young man who comes, or a young lady who comes and says, time for me to get married?
Yes, of course. We had one such adult who was, because his elder sister got married. And when he saw his elder sister getting married, After that, he said, it's time for me also to get married. He was coming to our vocational unit still. So one thing we asked, we were asking him, we just shared with him like, okay, you will get married and you should also get married, but whether you will be able to support your family. Do you have a work, or can you work, or you have a job, or can you earn that where you can take care of your family? Are you confident in that? So there he had a little doubts. He didn't know what to do or what has to be done. So that's how we are just, especially these issues and questions come when we have these self-advocacy group meetings, because we are asking them to share their need, to talk for themselves. So this was the issue which comes continuously in these groups. So that is where we try to tell them and help them to understand, like, yes, you have to get married, but at the same time, you also need to have a little more independence in your life. You have to be independent. So that's how we are right now counseling them. Yeah.
You want to say something on the subject? Yeah. No, on this subject. On this subject of marriage. Purnima?
I have seen quite a few patients where the family seem to have been successful in getting the person married to another person. Usually it will be from a lower socioeconomic status or another person with intellectual disability or with some physical disability, saying that this person is not very intelligent, but the other person has locomotor disability, she will take care of the business and this person can run. While usually in urban settings, we find people where they are usually reluctant to get into any risk of that sort, and then it gets into a problem. Currently, we are seeing a person who repeatedly says that he wants to get married. So currently the contract made is that let us see. So it's more of postponing. We do not know how we would actually be handling it at that time.
It also sometimes works well to just engage the person in asking as to why he wants to get married. Many a times it may not be the way we think. It may be that he loves now new clothes, give some attention. So, being the center of attention on that day, etc. We can give opportunities for them to do that. Of course, I'm not saying that they should not be encouraged to get married, but I think most families would have thought about it and would have worked towards it, and I think they will, if given an opportunity, they will get them married also. But in the meanwhile, it is important to understand why this person is asking them. So sometimes we will be surprised as to it may be something else that we would not have thought, and we can be easily provided without
having to get married. Yeah, that's a costly affair to get. Yes. In fact, what he says is very, very striking, because one of the boys said that he will get a suit then. If he gets married, he will get a suit. So engaging, and this is something that happens again repeatedly, and we see that when work with children also. Like, at what age can a child be interviewed? The same way, what can an adult with intellectual disability, what can he say for himself, like what Madam said? One will be surprised of what they can say for themselves. So they can say a lot about themselves. It depends upon at what level they are and their level of disability and so forth. But the ability to engage in a conversation, especially about your needs, is probably something that they can jolly well tell you very well. So their needs are paramount in their mind. They have the vocabulary and the facility to talk about it. And if you notice, we have been largely talking about the mildly intellectually disabled. When we go down lower in terms of the ability and moderate to severe intellectual disability, things get harder and harder, in terms of behavior problems, in terms of self-help skills. But this much...
less about marriage and all, they may not ask.
I have also noticed that when it comes to marriage, is that Avinash who asked from Manipur? Yes? Yeah. That you will find that when it comes to marriage, lots of families do come and ask us, but they go ahead and do just what they want. And very often they come with the results of this, that the spouse is ready to leave, or can we intercede with the spouse and explain to her what the disability is. But there are occasional families who come to tell us and ask our opinion. And I must say that in a number of families, we have actually spoken to the girl or the boy who wishes to get married. My experience has largely been, I've spoken to more non-disabled girls who are getting married to intellectually disabled men. And they have asked us to actually discuss with the lady. I have occasions where we have had this kind of discussions, and where one young lady came and told me, I have no chance of getting married by myself because we give a lot of dowry, and I am the sixth daughter of my father. And here is the gentleman who I know is intellectually disabled. I was surprised. And she says, I can look after whatever they want me to look after, but I will have something for my life. Well, I was very surprised. I asked her, had she met anybody? Like, she sounded like she was tutored. But I have met these families, I've met this family thereafter, and I've seen that they have made a reasonable success out of it. In fact, strangely, the boy's mother and father have divorced. Not divorced, separated. The mother and father have separated. The intellectually disabled boy, this lady, and her father-in-law live together. So strange are the ways of how things happen. But we are people who will be called upon to give our opinion. Whether it's taken or not, it's a different question. But I think marriage, the other issue with intellectually adult disabled people we get is on masturbation and sexual issues. Lots of them actually ask, the families ask. And even if they don't ask, I believe that if you're dealing with adolescent, adult, intellectually disabled, you must proactively ask about sexual issues, because whether you like it or not, it automatically happens. Very rarely do these people, because they are intellectually disabled, that's another myth, of course, I'm sure you all have busted those things, that because you're intellectually disabled, sexual needs should be down. You know, that isn't so. So I think proactively some of these things will have to be discussed with caretakers, especially as the adult and the adolescent one. Anybody else? There was one another question you said.
That's generic.
Yeah, it was how supportive is the community in accepting intellectually disabled persons in society? I mean, one question I have is, when you set up homes of different kind, and NGOs have told me this, that when they take some house for rent in a locality, if they don't canvass enough and talk to the locality enough, the locality talks about, don't have the house here. So have you had such experiences for adults where, you know, you have set up rehabilitation homes, or you'll have set up any place for day center like?
No, of course, most of our work has been in the rural area. So where we have not come across so much resistance. In fact, we got it from the public places to set up the place and the centers.
Yeah, you have a question to ask.
Yeah. Sometimes we are faced with this question, like we have parents coming and asking, like, this girl may not be able to take care of herself. There is a risk that the person may be abused. Can something be done to avoid pregnancy, say hysterectomy or some other operation? So have you faced such instances in the community, and how have you dealt with it?
Of course, in one case, even after our telling the parent, like, no, this is not the age and you should not be doing it, the parents did not listen to us, and they went ahead with the hysterectomy. One of the things, but it is a sort of a mixed response we get. Many parents, what we see is they are dealing with the thing, and they have not gone into it. They try to understand, and they say, yes, we are taking care of our adult girl, and we will be able to do it. But there are parents now who just come and tell us, like, it is not possible, and it is, we don't know, especially when in the rural areas we have seen 1 or 2 cases. And in fact, there have been accidents also in the rural areas. Accidents means such sort of sexual abuse, assault with intellectual disabled has happened. And then the other parents, they come and tell us, like, you are seeing this is the situation in the rural area. We couldn't do anything. We went up to the Women's Commission, the local women's place and all. They couldn't even identify who has sexually assaulted that girl. And the girl had to go for an abortion, and all those things had to be done. So the other parents were very, seeing such cases in the rural areas, they become very scared about the whole thing. And then when we tell them, we counsel them that they should not be doing, they give us examples. So then it is very difficult for us also to convince in some So it depends on, no, we can't generalize with all case. It depends on the parent and the mother, like how much confidence she has and how much she can understand these issues. Some parent, no, they just don't listen and they go ahead. Even if we tell them, they don't. But some parent, yeah, they don't.
But I see two issues. One of them is the issue of menstruation and cleaning and keeping clean every month is being done by somebody else. So can we stop that? So for that reason, there is one group which will ask. The other group will ask is for mustn't have a baby. So that's how we want to have. So oftentimes, like Jagdisha was saying, get the family into a dialogue and talk about the issues like ma'am said. Let them unload and tell you what the issues are. We have noticed in particular cases, highly poverty-stricken, absolutely no support. Mom has to go to work. It's a slum. She can hardly lock the door and lock the adult young person into that place and go. She will tap, somebody will open, and this girl will go out. And she goes missing. And then the mother comes back from work. Now here, subsistence for the mother and help for the mother in getting an occupation which is safe where she can keep her child is more important than going and doing something for the girl. So if you want to do something, we start from there. On the other hand, there are groups of parents who, after you dialogue with them and discuss how cleaning can be done, how safety can be ensured, and what do other people do, are in a position to train. Just because it is menstruation, they feel very troubled about it. But usually we take the example of bathing, brushing your teeth. How long did it take to teach your child? These are self-help strategies that the child has to do. If you can teach something like this, this also can be broken up and be taught. And so if it is just care and hygiene, it can be taught. If it is protection in terms of, how to look after oneself, then on a case-by-case basis, you see where this child can learn how to shout, how to scream, who are the people. Is she vulnerable? Is she in a setting which makes her vulnerable? If she's not in a setting which makes her vulnerable, why go and do such kind of things to her? Even in people who are vulnerable, what else can we do to enhance the mother's capability of looking after this girl? These are hard work. This is hard work, and it's actually, nowadays, the gynecologist won't do it. The gynecologist will ask for a letter from the psychiatrist. At one time, it used to be done that they would go ahead and do it. Most people now, if the person is intellectually disabled, won't agree for a hysterectomy just like that. They will say, who's the person you're going to go and get a letter? We have got people who come to us, and then we are able to talk about it. But there are people who will go ahead and get it done anyway. But
just to add, I think some of these problems are not so much a case-to-case basis as a systemic problem. For example, when a family is worried about abuse because the mother has to work and they're not sure where to put their child, that actually points to a lack of daycare facilities there. So this problem is probably not something that we see solely as a clinical problem, where a part of a larger piece, for example, that's where the advocacy groups should perhaps advocate for, should focus on these needs which are not so much seen or taken care of. That would be something that those would be targets which were important. So not all of these problems, I mean, this may be the simplest response to another problem. And perhaps the only way to actually change that would be to have a better response in the system.
Yeah, the better response in the system is harder to do and requires far more persistence. Whereas mom and dad want action now.
And ma'am, I think this could be connected to the legal guardianship issue that Ruma brought about, was that after the age of 18, again, most people, unless you have a legal guardian who could take a decision on behalf of the child who's above 18 to do such procedures, comes in. And that's when where possibly if we can make more people aware of getting in through the legal guardianship to help them do all these aspects. Good decisions.
I don't know how much more time we have. It's about time. Yeah. Before concluding, I also wish to say that adults with intellectual disability can have medical problems just like everybody else. Not enough attention is paid to the medical problems, diabetes, hypertension, increased vision. All of this can be, somebody wanting to say something? Yeah. Okay. So this is something that people who deal with intellectually disabled must be aware that they could be medically ill and not have the issue of being intellectually disabled mask or overshadow the fact that these people can be physically ill. That's one thing. The second thing that I would wish to say is that the rehabilitation of the intellectually disabled adult doesn't start at 18. Like Madam said, it started much earlier. You have already started at age 13, 12, 14. You're already talking to the parents about what will this child do 5 years down the line. And I find that useful when I'm talking to parents. They're talking about school, they're talking about this. So I said, 5 years down the line, what do you see this young lady be? What will she be doing? What have we trained her to do? And if the person is between mild and moderate, definitely will need time to be trained. So the pre-vocational skill will have to start very early. If by the time the person is going to be skilled at something, you will have to start it much earlier. So that again is an attitude and a philosophy that the treating team needs to put across. Not first time it won't go, second time it won't go. By the time you talk about it the nth time, they are also thinking about it. Because even schools now, at 18 they will say, next year we won't keep your child. So what happens then? At 18, what are they going to do? So the child has been doing academic activity. So where is the pre-work going to start? When is the vocation going to start? Yeah. And you ask an 18-year-old to start bending, where's the work ethic? He's not going to start having his work ethics at 18. He's going to start looking after himself and washing his dishes and doing stuff. He should have started it much earlier. So oftentimes, we think like what ma'am was saying, prevention, you start thinking of this much earlier. Put in all the deposits of goodwill at a much earlier time. You'll be able to draw out at a later date. Otherwise, it doesn't work because it's a much harder thing for rehabilitation to start later. Yeah. Any last things to say?
Yeah, I think what you rightly said was, I think the whole process of rehabilitation needs to be looked in a more comprehensive and a holistic way from the initial years.
Yes.
Like you can't put it into piecemeal like, okay, I'm just looking into the medical part, I will see education later. So when the rehabilitation process starts, I think it has to carry on and looking into the whole lifespan.
Currently, there is one question. Yes.
Oh. This question is from Manipal. I think Avinash wants to ask this. His mic is not working. So he says that I would like to ask regarding what is the scenario like for borderline intelligence range, especially when behavioral problems or any other psychiatric comorbidities make their rehabilitation at school very difficult. At the community level is another question. I've had about 2 cases where I find it difficult to give any viable alternatives at the community level.
That is basically when they have the behavioral problems.
And they are
not intellectually disabled. Less intelligent than normal.
They don't fall into that full range.
Of course, especially when it comes to the intellectual disability, the behavior problem is one of the biggest challenge when it comes to the schools. And we have seen like where the teachers really don't cooperate with us is when the child is having a behavior problem. But with this whole thing of right to education, at least what we are expecting is up till 14 years, this child should be getting, and especially the government schools are supposed to do rehabilitation, education. And of course, there are these teachers, but we don't know that we have the special teachers in the government schools. From which part, from which he's from?
Manipal.
Manipal. See, because I think if you must be aware that Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, it has these special teachers, 2 teacher per block. We are not sure how many times they will come to the school, but this teacher is definitely there. And I think we as community people and with whom disabled children where we are work, we try to get these teachers to help us and some way sensitize also the classroom teachers, saying like, but yes, the behavior modification aspects really need to be dealt by the people who are in it.
And I can see what Avinash is talking about, because you will find, Avinash, that as the person grow older and they have behavior problems, the chances are that they will be heavily medicated, because the alternative to that is actually having to do a lot of behavioral management. and actually spending time with the youngster, and if he's not going to school, then who's going to look after, what's the behavior problem, what's the cause of the behavior problem, how do you manage it? So I'm not saying that it's easy. It's very labor intensive, but there is no shortcut, because you will end up giving medications to quieten the person, and the person is not going to school, not going to work. I don't know whether many people here have found it useful, but I think cooking is an exceedingly good job that many people like to do. A mother will never think of including the child for cooking, because it takes more of a time and it's very hard to handle that person in the kitchen. But you will have to look upon some occupation which motivates the young person. So I don't know what it is, but maybe talking to that person will help. But motivating something can work. Otherwise, a good program, a few sessions, maybe a couple of weeks of activity with you, and you will understand the problem better. Otherwise, the young person will end up with medication, a lot of it. Thanks a lot. I think we have taken a lot of time, and I'm sure there are some concluding remarks. Anybody here? Or you conclude?
Okay. We thank all the participants for having joined in. Unfortunately, due to some unforeseen and unavoidable circumstances, Professor Chavan could not join us for the didactics. We hope to have it at a later date. The next session of VKN is on 22nd of April. It will be about rehabilitation of persons with schizophrenia, where people from SCARF will be discussing 3 cases. One on cognitive remediation, one on social skills, the other on vocational training. And Professor Tara will also be delivering a lecture on the evolution of ideas. So we look forward to meeting you on 22nd April. March we are taking leave because the 4th Friday happens to be a Good Friday. So we will take a month's break and then we'll be back on 22nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please email places where you have logged in multiple people. So please send us an email of the list of participants who have attended this session. We would also request all individual people in classrooms like Atma and from Manipal to actually individually register in the vlc.nimhans.ac.in website.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks very much.